Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon here today with Ravi Mehta. So excited to have him here because he is one of my product gurus I've been following for years and was lucky enough to take his AI strategy course on Reforge, which I highly recommend to anyone who's looking to learn about how to do AI product strategy. And he is not just a strategy guru, he is also a product guru because he has been a former CPO at Tinder. He's led products at Xbox, TripAdvisor, Facebook, and other places. And he is the creator of two of my favorite tools, the Product Strategy Stack and the Product Competency Wheel, which I recommend to any product people who are trying to figure out what are the competencies that I should have in this job. And it's one thing that I actually used at Usersnap in building our own framework for the career path. So he's known for clear, practical thinking and product leadership, including AI strategy now. Ravi, thank you so much for being one of our experts.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
First question for you, Ravi. What is the biggest mistake that you see in AI strategy development?
I think there's two mistakes that I commonly see. There's two different failure modes, so there are two sides of the same coin. The first one is for teams to think that they need to reinvent the wheel. When embarking on an AI strategy, it's easy to think that the way that you win with an AI strategy is to focus on the AI technology and make sure that you have the very best AI technology. But the world that we're living in today is the most powerful models are available for you to use via an API from OpenAI or Anthropic or Google. And so you can use off-the-shelf AI technology to create a really bespoke product for your customers. And so the alternative failure mode that I see is oftentimes people say, okay, we're just going to use this model. We're going to plug it into our product. We'll have some AI chat. And they don't think about what is the technology capable of? What do our users need it for? And how do we integrate it in our product in a very deep way rather than just layering it on top? And so the two problems really are trying to reinvent the wheel, in which case teams can get caught up in working on fine tuning or model development or other fundamental technology things where it's almost always the case that a bigger company that's more well capitalized is going to be able to outcompete and outpace you in those areas, or not understanding the technology well enough, just using it off the shelf and plugging it into your product without really thinking about what the user problems are. And so I think that the most important thing for AI strategy development is to be very clear about what the user problems are, how AI can uniquely solve those problems, and how you can use the things that are proprietary and unique to you. That's the data that you have that is unique customer data or unique domain data that you have, how you can use that to plug into the AI and make that more bespoke for your product. And then increasingly, what is the unique functionality that your product has? Because one of the AI capabilities that's getting better and better, especially with the agents, is enabling the AI to actually call functionality within your product, to use your product like a super user. And so thinking about your unique data, your unique functionality, and bringing that together with off-the-shelf AI models is a way that you can create a really deeply integrated and bespoke AI product without having to reinvent the wheel.
What I love about this answer is that it really forces us as product people to have a deep understanding of our own capabilities and our own systems, and how do we leverage that for a deeper integration using the strength of AI and its analytical capabilities and its data processing capabilities. I think it's really a way of saying, take your product to the next level. Don't just try to recreate a model.
Absolutely. Yeah. And AI can give your product superpowers. And so what are the superpowers that your customers need and that your product needs?
Question number 2, what customer behavior would signal to you that AI is becoming really central to their workflow?
I think the most exciting thing about AI is it enables you to solve a much wider range of customer problems. And so if you think about it, AI gives us the ability to do things that were impossible just a few years ago. It would have been impossible to generate an image. It would have been impossible to look at an image and tell whether or not that image contains a bird or a person. And now things that seem magical and impossible with traditional software are now actually really easy to integrate. And so that increases the surface area of problems that we can solve. And so I think it's important to look at how are your customers using your product today, and what are unresolved pain points, what are repetitive tasks that they might have to do over and over again, what are areas of your product that cause cognitive burden, what are areas of your product where there's inefficient workarounds. So part of it is working for the customer, but part of it isn't, and so they've got to use another product, or maybe go outside of your product into a different tool to accomplish the task that they have. And so looking at it from that way, you can start to understand, here are the unmet customer needs that our product has, or our customers have when using our product. And then how do we use AI to actually solve for those needs? And the thing that's important to look for is that overlap between the superpowers that AI can give you, the unmet customer problems. And now that you find the overlap, you can say, okay, we can use AI in a way that is going to enable us to solve a wider scope of those problems and enable our product to be a much better fit for customers. And I think that this is one of the reasons that you see all of these different companies, whether it's Figma or Notion, adding so many different features to their products. So Figma, for example, today launched Slides, which competes with PowerPoint, Make, which competes with Cursor. They have Draw, which competes with Illustrator. They just launched Sites, which competes with Webflow and Framer. And it's because they know that now they're able to solve a much wider set of customer problems. And if you can be the point place that your customers come to for the widest set of problems, then in this new AI era, you're going to win. And so I think that's the first thing to start with, is to really understand what your customers are, what are the edge of things that you can solve for them, and then how do you expand that to be as all-encompassing for them as possible so that they can get what they need done in one place.
It sounds to me like being a platform is the place to be in the AI strategy space. Would you say that's a good summary?
I think that's a great summary. I think a really good example of that is you look at what Grammarly has done recently. So Grammarly acquired Coda, and then they just acquired the email platform Superhuman. And so Grammarly was often used as an adjacent tool in whatever work surface you're using to create, whether that's Google Docs or whether that's Notion. But as AI gets more powerful, a lot of the functionality that Grammarly used to provide is moving directly into those platforms. Notion now has a whole bunch of tools to be able to edit and improve text. And so Grammarly is moving to, rather than improving their adjacent tool with AI, saying, how can we become a core part of that work platform? And so by acquiring Coda, which is a Notion competitor, and Superhuman, where people are doing a lot of their text creation when they're sending emails, it moves them from that adjacent space into more of a centralized platform.
Are there any customer segments that you believe have the best potential for AI adoption today?
Yeah, absolutely. In the AI strategy course, we talk about a tool called the AI Maker Matrix. And it's essentially a 2x2 matrix where you can map users based on the needs that they have for AI. And the two axes of the matrix are taste and craft. And so taste is the ability for a user to know exactly what they want, to have an editorial opinion on what output they want. And then craft is the ability to actually deliver on that. And so one of the most exciting things about AI is it's enabling a new type of creative. So these are people that have taste, they know exactly what they want, but they may not have had the craft, the ability to bring that vision into reality. We can see that with image generators like Midjourney. It's possible to generate beautiful photographs and beautiful illustrations if you have a strong perspective on what you want. Another good example is Descript, which is a AI-powered video editing tool that enables a new, more casual video creator to create great video content and not have to master something like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, which are very complicated programs to use. And so the first kind of area of users I think to target are people that have a strong creative vision and want to be empowered or amplified by AI. The other quadrant that's really common is you have someone who doesn't have a strong opinion on the output and doesn't have the ability to actually deliver on that. And in that case, they're actually looking to delegate the task. And so For example, you might say, uh, I want to create a user education video for my product. And in that case, you might use a product like Synthesia, which allows you to generate those types of videos. So it's something where the user is saying, I actually want to outsource this or delegate this entire task to AI. So those are two common personas within AI: the new creative and the person that wants to delegate. Another common one is someone who has craft, so they're an expert, but they want to use AI to amplify their abilities. And so we see things like Cursor, for example, enabling developers who are great at the work that they do, but want to do that type of work even faster and even better. And so that AI Maker Matrix can help you understand what are the different personas that you can solve for with AI and enable you to create a product that does a really good job solving for those people.
What you just said boils down to almost how strong is my opinion and how much do I want to leverage it. So if you've got a really opinionated background and you want to see that opinion represented in what you're building, or if you don't, but you do have some craft skill and you can be scrappy and build things and you want to delegate some of the opinionatedness and leverage that opinionatedness, it's almost like a how much do you want to influence that product sort of cursor. And I really remember that part of your course really stuck with me. And it's something that I use even when we're thinking about the end users of our product and the AI solutions that we're building is like, which archetype are we building for? Or is it sometimes a combination of archetype? And trying to understand that maker matrix has been a really good way for us to think about the targeting.
We can see that taking shape in certain tools. Like if we look at vibe coding tools or AI coding assistants, on one hand, we have things like Lovable, which is enabling a new creative, someone who wasn't able to code before, to build really great products. Then we have products like Cursor and Windsurf, which enable people who are engineers today to amplify their work. And then we have products like Devin, where Devin says, we are your AI software engineer. Give us a ticket in Jira and we'll go and we will build that out completely autonomously. And so that's solving for more of that delegation use case. And so it's interesting to actually see that these different user personas or products for these different user personas are already starting to take shape.
Which area of AI strategy would worry you the most if it got like a negative response? Or if you're exploring your AI strategy, is there something that's like a red flag for you?
The thing from an AI strategy standpoint that worries me the most is solutions in search of problems. So we're living in a time right now where there's constantly new AI capabilities being made available. The list is there's already dozens of things on the list, things that would have been impossible a few years ago, whether it's image generation or video generation or background removal or editing text or translating used to be this almost intractable problem, and now it's pretty easy for AI models to do. So we have this amazingly broad and powerful set of Lego blocks to build with. And I think one of the things that as the tech industry we've always been guilty of is solutions in search of problems. But now it's easier than ever to say, okay, this feature came out. How can we actually deliver it to our customers? And if there's an AI feature that's really exciting to you as a builder, and you put it in front of customers and customers aren't engaging with it, that's a red flag that you haven't identified the underlying user problem that can solve. And it's interesting to look at some of the most advanced AI products don't actually talk a lot about AI. One of the guests that we had for the AI strategy course is Laura Burkhauser, who's the head of product at Descript. And Descript is this really incredible AI-powered video editing product. And within the product, it can do things that do seem magical. So there's a function to fix eye contact. So if you're looking down at your notes, you can tell Descript that I want to fix eye contact, and it'll actually move a person's eyes so that they're looking directly at the camera. There's another one called Studio Sound, which will take audio that's recorded in an environment that's less than ideal and make it sound like it's recorded within a professional studio. And what's interesting is Descript doesn't actually talk a lot about AI anywhere in the product. Most of the AI capabilities are actually packaged in user problems like Studio Sound or like eye contact. And I think that's a really good way to think about how to build out your AI powered product. Ultimately, AI is interesting to us as product builders. It's actually not that interesting to users in a lot of cases. Yes, there's a lot of hype. People are talking a lot about it. It's an interesting cocktail party topic. But at the end of the day, the thing the user really cares about is what's the problem I'm trying to solve and how can I solve it as easily as possible. And they're less concerned about whether or not it's AI powered. And so I think a red flag is you've taken an AI feature, users just aren't engaging with it. They don't understand how it fits into their workflow. That's a really good signal to step back and say, okay, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And is this actually the right area to iterate in?
Yeah, it makes total sense for me. And something that it really makes me think about is this idea of bells and whistles AI. It's like, is your AI core to the problem? Or in some cases, and we've even seen this in our own product when we build it for some users, there are things about the problems that we're solving that generated new problems for them that we weren't aware of and that we have to now like consider. So it's about knowing the core value and not just like being a bells and whistles kind of solutioning thing where you have an idea, you think it's good, you push it on the user, and then finally they're like, this isn't really core to my problem space. I really don't want it. And in that case, I think you might even see them ask you to turn it off.
Absolutely. And there's lots of different ways to solve things. For the majority of the history of software, we've solved problems with traditional software. And that's going to still be the way that we solve things. We don't need to use an AI model for everything. And sometimes using an AI model is slow and inefficient and expensive. And so it's also worth thinking about, is there a better, faster way to solve this for customers versus, having everything go through an AI experience?
So areas that are worrisome are low engagement, maybe ways that you could solve it more easily, quickly, and less expensively without AI would be a strategy red flag to go with AI. Or if you see people like asking, hey, please turn this off. That's probably the biggest red flag of all during your MVP phase. If people are like, turn this off, please, you've gone down the road.
Which is happening a non-trivial amount. I talked to a lot of product leaders and they say, customers are actually asking them to turn off AI. That wasn't something that we had anticipated. Now we've got to go in and figure out how our product can work with it and without it.
Yeah, I think that is a real use case in some of these enterprise spaces where they're concerned about IP or exploitability.
Absolutely.
And those, in my experience anyway, those are the ones who are more wary. And there are ways of using AI in a more proprietary way that we're looking at, but I do think that it's like a second wave of AI that's coming. Last question for you. Where do you recommend that product teams begin when trying to validate their AI strategy?
So we just launched a Reforge article called "Is Your Product at Risk of Product Market Fit Collapse?" Brian Balfour, the CEO of Reforge, published an article a while ago talking about this phenomenon of product market fit collapse, which is something that we haven't seen before in the history of tech. And the idea there is that the threshold that you need to hit for product market fit is always increasing. Jeff Bezos has this quote where he says, the thing that I love about customers is that they're always discontent. There's always another problem to solve for them. But now we're seeing that customer expectations are changing so fast that certain products that had really strong product market fit are losing it almost instantaneously. And so one example that we talk about is Stack Overflow. And so the underlying user problem there is developers needed help writing code when they got stuck, which is a common thing. And the thing that they would do is they would go to Stack Overflow, they'd find a question similar to the one that they have, or they'd ask a question, they'd get an answer, and then they'd go back to the work that they're doing. And it turns out that GitHub Copilot and Cursor can solve that much better than Stack Overflow, and they could solve it quickly and in the tool that developers are already working in. And so Stack Overflow has very quickly lost product market fit. And so the question that we wanted to answer is, what are the factors that actually lead to companies being vulnerable to this type of AI-based disruption versus, what are things that actually make a company really strong? There's certain companies that have moved very quickly on AI because they knew that there was the potential to get disrupted. Adobe, for example, is one of them. Generative AI is, by its definition, creative. And so as a company that provides a creative suite, they needed to move quickly to make sure that AI was being integrated into their tools so that windows of opportunity didn't open up for new startups to come in and take part of the design tool market. Other companies like Airbnb, for example, have been much slower to respond because they're actually not at any sort of immediate threat from an AI perspective, and they want to take time to come up with an AI strategy that's really user centric, and they have the time to be able to do that. So we have this 18-factor framework. There's factors like, for example, we talked about earlier, are you a platform or are you an adjacent tool? And depending on where you are on that spectrum, that makes you more or less vulnerable. Other factors like, what is your margin? Are you a high margin business today? If so, then you have the margin to be able to invest in more expensive AI technology to solve for your customers. But if you're a low margin business, you may not be able to use AI models effectively. So I think a really good starting place for teams to understand their AI strategy is to go through that disruption framework and understand where are they on solid ground today and where are there some potential vulnerabilities, and then how to think about their AI strategy in light of that understanding of where they are today, and how to move to a position where they're in a stronger position.
Yeah, I actually think this is my favorite part about the AI strategy course, if I'm being honest with you. Right now, this was the thing that for me was the most eye-opening, because I could look at the 4 factors: use case, growth model, defensibility, and business model, and think about, okay, how is our revenue being generated, and is that any risk? And what does AI mean for that? Which I think is something that people don't always think about when they're diving into AI, is like, there's a cost model here. You're going to
Yeah.
pay for this. And right now, those AI solutions are pretty open. And we should absolutely expect that those markets, when they gain a level of traction, as Brian has said in his own articles, which I thought was fantastic. Another article, if you haven't read it, go read Brian's article about the open and closing of markets. They're accessible to us right now. They may eventually close. And so if you get too entrenched in one particular solution for your AI product, you may find yourself in their moat and in a problem space later, because then they've got you and you just have to pay because it's core to your business. So there are a lot of business model things that I think Brian has touched on and you have touched on in that course that were super interesting to me when we were examining our strategy and where do we want to build our defensible and growth model and use cases while still maintaining some level of AI flexibility and abstractability. I think that that's a challenge that we need to think about when moving forward. So yes, absolutely, go take this assessment. The article that I just looked up is called "Is Your Product at Risk of AI Disruption?" It's a super explanation that shows you that PMF S-curve that you have to be on all the time, that PMF treadmill, as you called it. And also this assessment is in here. So super great tool to get started. Great idea.
Absolutely. And we have, it was a tool that was vibe coded. So it's an assessment tool. You can go in, you can answer all the questions. It'll calculate the score for you and help you figure out where to focus.
Chef's kiss. Love it.
Yep.
That's going to wrap it up for us today. Ravi, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, to share your use cases and learnings and some of these little snippets from the course that I really loved. There's a few references and articles that we're going to give to you at the end of this in the article that we're going to publish along with this video. So if you are just watching this on YouTube, make sure you go back and read the article to get those. And thank you so much, Ravi, for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.